Welcome to the Resellers Niche Podcast, a show for e-commerce buyers and sellers where we investigate unique categories of items being bought and sold and show you how research equals knowledge equals profit. And now the duo who'll never leave you shortchanged. It's your hosts, Russ and Mo.
Welcome back, folks. How's it going, Russ?
It's going good, Mo. Who do we have this week as our guest?
We have Dan. He's an expert when it comes to VCRs, VCR DVD combos, and similar electronics. So, Dan, welcome to the show. And we just had a few. Let's start off with a little backstory. Could you tell us about how you began selling VCRs, DVDs, and similar electronics?
Yeah, no problem. It was just kind of a progression. I started selling books first online.
Oh, okay.
Kind of went into, I guess, audio, CDs, stuff like that, movies, that kind of stuff. And I did that part-time for a while, and did that for a couple years, just doing Amazon, just doing books.
Okay, so you started on Amazon. Was that FBA or...
No, just because I was only doing it part-time, it was more just, to supplement, my income. I was working with dogs and I just, company, things happen, and company was kind of going downhill, and my friend introduced, knew I did the online sales with the books, and, she did a lot more on eBay, and just kind of, I helped her out at first, and I still do a little bit, but it kind of just led me into selling more of my own stuff. And I guess, just the niche that I ended up kind of getting into was VCRs, and VCRDVD combos, that kind of stuff. There's decent profit on it. I had fun doing it. And it's just kind of where I'm at now,
Awesome. So now when, everybody knows the old VCRs and everybody had the tapes and everything. And it's kind of one of those things that we saw them around everywhere, and now they're not as much around. But let me ask you a question real quick. What brand names, when you're out looking, what brand names of VCRs do you not touch?
I can't say if there's a specific brand name I don't mess with. I do keep an eye out, for, I guess, the usual, Sony, Magnavox, RCA, those are all good brands. As far as the ones I stay away from, I can't say it's a specific brand, because I always test them, before I leave the store, or before I, say wherever I'm buying it from, I usually make sure it works first. More so than brands, I stay away from the older models. Typically, those there's less of a chance of the picture quality being real clear. The outputs on the back, if there's not two audio, the left and right side, I usually stay away from those. Just the older models more so don't seem to do as well for me. The later model VCRs is what I go for. Those sell more, and a lot of it has to do with how easy it is for me, or how difficult, I should say, to find extra accessories such as the remote, stuff like that. If I can find the remote easy and everything seems like it works good, I'll usually pick it up if it's a good price.
Gotcha. Thanks for that, Dan. That's a great answer. I'm learning already. So let me step back for just a second. Being old school, being an old man, my VCRs were first plugged in with with a balun, with the old two screws. So that's kind of the ones you're staying away from. Is that correct?
Yeah, a lot of the models will still have, the RF, output. They'll still include that, but but yeah, if I understand what you're saying, there's usually like the yellow, red, and white, as far as the RCA component cables go. Yellow is always video, red and white are audio. I look for ones, with the red and white both,
Gotcha.
Both audio channels instead of being mono, which would be just the one audio plug-in. I kind of stay away from the mono audio VCRs. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Now, on those vintage brands like that, or look back a little bit further, you say you usually don't for that, but are there some that you've seen? Like I know some in electronics, like if I see a Marantz or a Pioneer or a couple Japanese brand and like receivers, I'll still grab them because sometimes they go for just parts. Is that kind of the same in VCR, or is it just, man, when those older ones just aren't much, even if they're top brand?
Yeah, at least with my experience, even the top brand ones, if they're old, mostly with the old, sorry, I was having issues here. There's not, the older ones I'd stay away from, right? It's, a little different from what you were saying. You see the Marantz and, you kind of buy that up. With VCRs, not so much. If they're old, a little bit too old looking, I don't have as much luck with those, at least in my experience. I more so, newer is what I go for mostly with VCRs.
Okay. And working kind of on the same line there, does Cosmetic Condition weigh in as much if a unit's working? Probably talking more about older units. Is that something you factor in?
I mean, it's definitely something I factor in. I guess like anything, it could definitely make a difference. However, I definitely, I don't have a big problem selling them if they have scratches here and there, especially depending on the name brand. I have a Sony right now I'm selling. It's got a couple dents in it. It's only been up it's been up less than a week. It hasn't sold yet, so but that's kind of a good test for me as far as that goes, because it's probably cosmetically the worst one I've sold so far. But that being said, if there's usually always, not always, but a lot of times scratches on the top, scratches on the side, little dings here and there. Doesn't seem to factor a whole lot necessarily. What sells them, in my experience, is the ease of use. If I can find a remote control for it easily, or if it comes with one, that will sell a lot. That will matter more so than the cosmetic, cosmetic dings and stuff like that. It's what I focus on is what the ease of use. When the buyer's going to want to do the least amount as possible. A lot of times, convenience is what I go for.
Okay. So you mentioned that about the remote there. So if you don't have a remote, if it's, a good buy, is that something you definitely, you go out and get the remote, or is it something where you can possibly maybe not sell or sell it without the remote? Or is that always the thing to do, always to get the remote?
You definitely can sell them without the remote. A lot of people do, but I almost always, before I even buy the unit, if it doesn't include the remote, I'll do a quick search and see what the prices are going for them, see how easy it's going to be for me to get one. If I can get a remote for it easily under $10, that's what I go for.
Cool. Maybe you've bought some of the remotes that I found, because that's another sellable item from this. If people do find remotes, put them on eBay, because there's people like yourself putting them on. So, what are some of the ones that do you ever buy them knowing it's kind of a high-end model and you found out it doesn't work? Do you ever buy them as is for parts sell?
With just VCRs themselves, I personally don't. I don't mess with I make sure they're working as good as possible. You know, if say I'm at Goodwill, I'll plug it in, I'll pop the tape in, I'll play it a little bit, I'll fast forward it, rewind. I give it as much as a test as I can. But if it looks like it's not working, I don't mess with the VCRs themselves. However, that being said, if you can get what I do buy, whether it works or not, is you get the VCR DVD combos with if the DVD site is able to record from the VHS. Those are a hot item. I pick those up every time. I mean, if I can get a good price on it, those will sell, as is 4 parts, you know, fairly easily. VCRs, though, VCRs themselves, those are a little bit harder sell if you're going to do those for parts. And I personally don't really mess with that too much myself.
Okay, good. Yeah, what's the one DVR or VHS DVD? It's that DVD-R, the one that read writes. If I see those, I pick them up, and if I can't even test them, they still sell, even if they're not working on both ends. So that's good. Now, you said also like on some combos and DVD and Blu-ray. Kind of tell me too, is like there's certain brands that you're looking for when you're out looking for the DVR combos?
The DVR combos, I've done good with, you know, Philip Magnavox is always that's always a good buy. Even Magnavox is a good one with, even if it doesn't have the DVR necessarily. Those combos always do well for me. Panasonic, they make good DVR VHS combos with, some of them will have a built-in hard drive that's actually built into the unit themselves. You can usually, it'll say, if you look you look close at everything that's labeled on there, they'll give you a little notification, or it'll say something with the hard drive, and those are always great. Those are ones you could pick those up whether they're working or not, and you'll probably, if you get them cheap enough, you'll make some money. It'll be easy sale. Okay.
And then I know this is maybe super outdated, but have you ever dealt with Betamax before? Is that something that's profitable or that people are looking for?
I personally haven't messed with Betamax too much. However, there is a market there. There definitely is a market there. Finding one that works can be a little tricky. They're harder to test because, you see one at Goodwill, you can't exactly just go grab a tape and test it out. There's a little bit more risk behind them, and I'm far from expert on Betamax, but I don't mess with them too much unless I know for sure it works. If I can get a guarantee that everything's working good on it, there's money to be made there, but it's not something I play with too much.
Okay. And are there any other kind of combos that we're not kind of talking about here? Like there's obviously the VCR DVD combo. Do they have ones that, maybe they have a tape deck on them or something else that's kind of a little bit maybe rare that people look for?
There could be something out there, but I've kind of kept my search pretty basic. I try to keep I'm always open to learning more, and I'll sell whatever I can if it makes money. But I've, focused more just on the basic, VCR, DVD, VHS combos. But yeah, I don't know. There probably is something crazy out there that's, worth some money, but I don't know.
Okay. And then obviously in terms of accessories, VHS tapes, is that something you work with, or is that something you can maybe match up, maybe a rare VHS cassette with a VCR? Or is that something people don't really do?
I do, because I do look for, rare VHS here and there, but more out of it's kind of a fun hobby for me. There's not much money in used VHS. some of the old B movie, like horror B movies from the 80s that were never released on DVD. They're hard to find, but those are worth a little bit. And you could find little ones here and there, but for the most part, VHS cassettes themselves there's not much money in them. But I do enjoy looking for them just for my own collection. You know, I like finding weird ones here and there, and you know, that kind of stuff, which is a little bit how I got into selling the VCRs, was doing that. But there's not a lot of money there in VHS cassettes.
Gotcha. All right, Dan, what's the one that when you find it, whether it's in a store or out of your garage sale, thrift store, or electronic store, what's that one thing that when you find, you hear that money cha-ching go off in your head?
It's definitely, you know, what I touched on earlier. It's the VHS DVD R combos. You know, if I know that I can record from a VHS onto a DVD with that unit, I always know it's, you know, especially if it sells and it has the remote with it, you know, I'm going to buy that almost every time. I know it's going to sell quick. A lot of people, you know, they want to transfer their old home movies on VHS over to DVD. You know, some people do that just for money. You know, some people transfer just for money. But those sell good. And when I see those, you know, especially if I see the remotes there with it, I know that's going to sell fairly quick. You know, I know I'm going to get a good profit on that.
Gotcha. That's just one of those things. And what, you know, I've picked those up non-working. I've picked them up for a couple bucks. And I think the last one I had sold for like 70. So there is high ROI on those for sure, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's, I mean, yeah, if they're not working, like you say, you could pick them up for a couple bucks sometimes. And even if they are, you know, there's a lot of people getting rid of stuff. And the last one I bought, I probably had $20 invested into it total after, you know, buying the remote and all that. And it sold for over 200, you know, and that had a few cosmetic dings here and there and stuff. It wasn't in perfect shape, but a real quick flip, you know, big profit on it, you know, easy money.
Good deal. You know, and I noticed on your eBay page too, you know, you sell more than just VCRs, like you said, some electronics, and I noticed a lot of like electronic parts. Can you go into more about those and tell us what you do with those?
Yeah, I wish I was more of an expert on that kind of stuff, because most of that stuff, to tell you the truth, was I got it dirt cheap, and I got a bunch of it dirt cheap and just listed it, you know, seeing where it goes. But it's nothing I have a huge, you know, nothing I have a lot of knowledge in, to tell you the truth, unfortunately. But it's just something that looked like one of those, you know, deals where it looked like a good deal. I took a small chance, because I didn't invest much into it, and that's just kind of from a big lot that I'm getting rid of. Nothing more than that.
Okay. I did hear, I don't know if it was in the last 6 months or so, it might have been Sony. They said that they announced that they were not going to be producing any more VCRs. I don't know if, I think it was Sony. Has that had an effect on, I guess, VCR sales in a good way or bad way? Or I'm not sure if I got Sony correct there.
Yeah, I'm not sure specifically with Sony, but I do know that the last company that was actually producing VCRs, the last one went off the line like a year and a half ago or so, something like that. It may be a little more, but yeah, VCRs are not being produced, at least right now. You know, no new ones are being made by anybody, which does definitely drive up the value. I don't know exactly why, but I seem to sell a lot to the Northeast, Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania. They seem to buy a lot of my VCRs. I don't know if they're more scarce, harder to find up there or something. But I do sell a lot up there, and I gotta say, you know, I'm sure it helps me a lot that they don't make them anymore. They don't make new ones. That has a lot to do with the value going up on them.
Definitely. And then I did have another question. We've talked about, VCR, DVD, and combos and remotes. Are there any other accessories possibly that maybe people overlook, or that would you could bundle them with, say, a VCR or a DVD that would be good for people to know about?
Yeah, I usually always include the RCA cables, component cables. If it's a high dollar unit, you can include the HDMI cable if you can get one cheap. The more accessories, the better. The faster, generally, the faster it's going to sell, the more accessories you have. Like I said earlier, convenience is a big thing, and people will pay for, they'll pay for convenience. So, cables, the more cables you have bundled with it, the easier it's going to be to sell. If you can, find the instruction booklet. A lot of people do look for that too. A lot of times, every so often, you can pick one up and, I'll buy one on Craigslist or OfferUp or something, and they will have the original manual with it. That's going to add a few bucks to the value. They're kind of harder to track down individually, but the more accessories, the better. The easier it's going to sell.
Awesome. Yeah. That's good. I got a question for you. You said most of your people or most of your buyers, you seem from a certain area. What do you think your typical buyer is? Is it somebody that just has a huge collection, or they love that vintage film type thing? I know there's a lot of younger people that like the vintage stuff, but then there's older guys like me that, I still don't know how to put a Blu-ray in right. But, so, where do you think these people are that are buying from you?
Yeah. That's a good question, actually. I don't know exactly why, like I say, the Northeast buys a lot. I don't know why, if they're, like you say, just for vintage purposes. I know I kind of have an affection to VHS for that reason. Certain movies, I like watching them on VHS. I don't know why that is, but I don't know many people like that, to be honest. So, but I'm down in Arizona, and like I say, I ship a lot of them for whatever reason to the Northeast there. Maybe there's a little, maybe they have a little following there, more of a appreciation, I guess, for the vintage movies, or maybe their old one broke down and they just, want that same model or something. But I don't know exactly why. I wish I knew. I wish I had a little better insight there.
Yeah. Yes, sir. I think it's one of those things, just one of those things that people like. So.
Yeah, I think so. And as long as they keep selling and I keep making a profit on it, I'm going to keep listing them,
All right. And we just really want to thank Dan for coming in today and talking and sharing with us.
Thank you very much.
Dan, where could people find you? If they want to contact you, you have a wealth of information. Where could they reach out to you?
My eBay page is DBay instead of E. It's a DBay, DBay 480. Or you can always email me, if you have any questions or anything, I'll answer it the best I can. DanielsDoggies@yahoo.com. So my full Daniel, DANIELS, no apostrophe, and doggies, DOGGIES @yahoo.com.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you so much. And I just want to thank everyone for listening to us, and Dan. And so for myself and Russ, would like to thank everyone for listening to the Reseller Niche Podcast, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you guys very much.
Here at Reseller Niche Podcast, we really like to stress on that research equals knowledge equals profit. I think Dan is a good case of that, Mo. There's a lot of research that can go into these VCRs. And he said, some of them just aren't sellable.
Exactly. And then he also talked about the different things that go into his process for thinking about selling them. So even though there are items that aren't maybe necessarily produced as much, he has a wealth of information about that helps him, on eBay, Amazon, wherever he's selling them.
Right. I did like the ideas that he did talk about. From that knowledge, where he gets his extra profit is some of those ancillary pieces, the cables, the remotes. You know, there's always that stuff that you have to look at, whatever product that you sell.
Definitely.
And it was
Definitely.
just really good to sit down with Dan and talk with him, and I really enjoyed it.
I did too. We're going to have him again. We should have him on again, and we can talk about some of the other components that we didn't touch on this time.
Thank you for listening to the Reseller Niche Podcast. Show notes and social media links are located at resellerniche.com. Please like and subscribe to us on iTunes.